Forward. Welcome back to the Ministry of Magic. The year is 2022, and nearly 25 years have passed since the Great Battle of Hogwarts. If you thought the heroes from your history books spent their days sipping butterbeer and signing autographs, you've clearly never worked for the government. Magical Britain has changed, and the Golden Trio has changed with it. Hermione Granger Weasley is the Minister for Magic. The girl who could brew polyjuice potion in a bathroom stall is now fighting the hardest war of her life. A war against parchment, quills, and wizards who fear computers more than Death Eaters. Harry Potter is the head of the Auror Office. The boy who lived has become the man who is exhausted. He still has the lightning scar, but nowadays his head aches from inventory reports rather than a connection to the Dark Lord. And Ron Weasley, well, Ron realized early on that civil service wasn't for him. He turned Weasley's Wizard Wheezes into a global corporation and became fabulously wealthy. He wears outrageously bright robes and, being the husband of the minister, regularly barges into his wife's office to test joke products on her staff. This is what happens when magic meets the internet, and saving the world is replaced by deadlines and domestic squabbles. Act 1. Breakfast with the Potters. Family Chronicles. The morning in the Potter household was quiet, that rare, fragile sort of quiet that only descends when the children have gone off to school. Harry sat at the kitchen table, his hands cupped around a mug of scalding black coffee. His hair, perpetually untidy, was now dusted with distinct silver streaks at the temples, and dark shadows of chronic sleep deprivation lingered beneath his eyes. Ginny Potter, sifting through a stack of letters delivered by the morning post, gently interrupted his reverie. "Harry, are you eating your breakfast or simply trying to hypnotize your porridge?" "I'm reflecting on the fact that fighting Voldemort in a forest at 17 was physically less demanding than trying to decipher the new tax code for house elves in my early 40s, Harry grumbled, finally looking up. Ginny smiled and set the newspaper aside. "By the way, did you check how the children are getting on at Hogwarts? Any news?" "Yes," Harry nodded at an opened envelope. "Albus sent a quick note. He says Professor Longbottom accidentally grew a screaming cactus in the greenhouse yesterday, which instead of merely shrieking, began belting out 80s hits. The entirety of Slytherin House was kept awake because the cactus was wailing 'I will survive' until 3 in the morning. Neville panicked and tried to prune it, but the cactus threatened him with a lawsuit on behalf of all the cacti in Britain." Ginny let out an involuntary laugh. Neville. To think the legendary war hero who slayed Nagini with the sword of Gryffindor is now engaged in legal disputes with singing shrubbery. What about Lily? Lily is thrilled with Hagrid. She writes that Rubeus is still the gamekeeper and remains absolutely convinced that a fanged carnivorous geranium is just a sweet little weed that needs a bit of love. In yesterday's lesson, he introduced them to some new crossbreed. He told them it was a perfectly safe little fluffball, even though, according to Lily, this fluffball has 3 rows of teeth and a habit of trying to bite the shoes off anyone under 5'10". "Hagrid will never change," Ginny sighed warmly. "He's nearly 100 years old, and he's still trying to tame things a normal person would try to incinerate from a safe distance." Harry's expression darkened as he glanced at the clock on the wall. "Listen, is it true that Hermione is launching that digital portal of hers today? Teddy Lupin sent a letter. He's terrified. He says Hermione made him spend the entire weekend helping her translate the terms and conditions from Latin into computer programming language." Harry checked the time. The hands were creeping inexorably towards 9 o'clock. He let out the heavy sigh typically reserved for those marching voluntarily to the gallows. "Yes, Ginny, Digitalization Day. Hermione is convinced that if she forces every witch and wizard to register on this website, world order will be achieved. She's even made digital pet registration mandatory. You do realize what that means, don't you? Elderly warlocks will be trying to shove their wands into USB ports, and Hagrid is definitely going to break something. He's allergic to any technology more complex than a cauldron. Harry rose from the table and pulled on his cloak. "It's time. I'm off to work." "Good luck, chosen one," Ginny winked.
Act 2. Terms and Conditions. Monday morning at the Ministry began with a historic event. In the great meeting room, Minister Hermione Granger Weasley presented her new masterpiece, the magical Great Britain Digital Portal. A neat web page glowed on a massive screen conjured in midair. "Colleagues, the era of owls losing our mail in thunderstorms is officially over," Hermione announced proudly. "As of today, Decree 404 is in effect on mandatory digital registration. Every witch and wizard must now register their magical pets online. No more queues at the Department for the Regulation and Control of Magical Creatures. 3 clicks and your Niffler is in the database." Teddy Lupin, who had recently joined the ministry as a junior assistant, raised his hand. He was the only person in the room not attempting to hide beneath his chair. Minister, Teddy corrected himself, his hair briefly turning a nervous shade of gray. "What about the terms of service? I read some Muggle forums, and they say it's like a contract with the devil." "Teddy, we discussed this on Sunday dinner," Hermione sighed, dropping the minister persona for a second. "It's a standard user agreement. You tick the box, 'I agree,' and that's it." "A tick box?" croaked the veteran Auror Dawlish, squinting suspiciously at the screen. "I've been in service for 40 years, Minister. The last time a wizard agreed to a long list of rules without reading them, it turned out to be an unbreakable vow, and the poor soul was forced to clean a mountain troll's ears for the rest of his life." "Dawlish, relax," Harry Potter muttered, sitting in the corner and dreaming of a double espresso. "Considering how many times you've been obliviated over the years, ticking a box really won't hurt. It isn't the Goblet of Fire. If you tick the box, the portal won't spit out your name and force you to fight a Hungarian horntail. The worst that will happen is a weekly newsletter about cauldron discounts. Hermione, can we go? Someone has cursed the water cooler in the Auror Office. It's dousing everyone in boiling water if they try to request a day off." "The portal is perfectly safe and intuitive, Harry," Hermione smiled condescendingly. "I wrote the code myself, crossing Muggle algorithms with ancient runes. I even cast a powerful, albeit experimental, Muggle-proof charm on the site. Not even the most technologically challenged wizard could possibly break it." She was never more wrong.
Act 3. A Visit from the Past. 3 hours later, Harry was in his office, buried under a mountain of reports. He dipped his quill into the inkpot and found himself missing the Chamber of Secrets. Yes, there had been a giant snake that killed with a glance, but at least the basilisk didn't require filing tax returns in triplicate. Suddenly, the floor beneath Harry's feet began to tremble. His inkpot rattled. Behind the door, he heard the frantic shouts of trainees and a sound like a falling oak wardrobe. The door burst open. Standing in the doorway was Rubeus Hagrid. The Hogwarts gamekeeper was nearly 100 years old, but his giant blood was doing its work. He still towered over the room, his head nearly brushing the ceiling. His famous beard was now snow white, and instead of his heavy crossbow, he leaned on his old, battered pink umbrella. In his other hand, Hagrid held a massive slobber-covered cardboard box bound with thick iron chains. The box was growling. "Hello, Harry," Hagrid boomed, so loudly that the portraits on the walls covered their ears.
Good to see ya. You look a bit peaked, Harry. Don't they feed ya at this job?" "Hagrid!" Harry jumped up, genuinely happy, but eyeing the growling box. "What are you doing in London? And, by Merlin, what is in the chains?" Hagrid sighed heavily and wiped his brow with a giant handkerchief. "It's this internet thing, Harry. Hermione sent a flat glowin' board to me hut. Said, 'Hagrid, we live in a new age. Register your new pet online.' I tried, Harry. Honestly, I did." "And what was the problem?" Harry asked, walking around the box in a wide circle. "Everything," Hagrid wailed. "First, the board said, 'Click with the mouse.' I spent half a day in the Forbidden Forest with Fang the Second, looking for a mouse. Finally, caught a field mouse. I clicked it against the screen, Harry, I really did. Nothing happened. The mouse just squeaked." Harry buried his face in his hands. "Hagrid, a mouse is a muggle plastic device. Never mind. What else?" "Then it said, 'Site uses cookies. Please accept.' Well, I'm a polite man. I pulled out a couple of me best rock cakes, Harry, laid 'em right on the screen as a gesture of goodwill, and the screen just cracked. So, Hagrid concluded, your magic is broken. I decided to do it the old-fashioned way. Brought the little feller here in person." "Hagrid, who is in the box?" Harry's voice wavered. Hagrid beamed with pride. "Me new favorite. We bred him by accident, me and Professor Longbottom. Neville mixed up the fertilizers in the greenhouse, and I left the gate open. Meet Fluffy the Third." Hagrid reached for the chains. "Wait, Hagrid, no!" Harry yelled. Too late. Hagrid snapped the latch open.
Act 4. Error 404. Server eaten. A creature the size of a small hippopotamus landed on the office carpet. It was a genetic impossibility. The creature was covered in thick black fur like a Scottish terrier, had the mane of a manticore, and a massive venomous scorpion tail. But worst of all was its face, a giant drooling flobberworm mouth that made wet, sucking noises. "It darlin', ain't he?" Hagrid cooed. "Only 3 months old." The darling burped, lashed its tail, slicing Harry's desk clean in half, and charged out into the ministry corridor. "After it!" Harry roared. "If it reaches the Department of Mysteries, we're finished." Panic erupted. Alarm sirens wailed in the voices of opera singers. Aurors lunged out of their offices, firing stunning spells, but the manticore hide absorbed the magic like a sponge. "Harry, what is going on?" Hermione sprinted out of the lift. Her hair was sparking with static. "Hagrid tried to register a pet offline," Harry yelled. "Hermione, get back!" Fluffy the Third skidded to a halt in front of a glass door labeled Main Server Room, Cloud Storage. The monster sniffed the buzzing servers, and its eyes lit up. "Not the server room!" the minister screamed. "That's the backup for the 5-year budget!" Fluffy the Third smashed the door with its head and began devouring the main fiber-optic cable with gusto. Instantly, the lights flickered. The digital portal crashed across the country. A collective groan echoed from the offices. The Aurors had lost their game of solitaire. Hagrid ran around them, waving his pink umbrella. "Harry, don't hit him with the red light. He thinks it's a laser game. Don't shout at him. He's very sensitive." "Hagrid, your sensitive baby just ate the macroeconomics of Britain," Hermione shrieked. The monster finished the cable, turned around, and looked at Hermione with a hungry expression.
Act 5. The Weasley Solution. Suddenly, the nearby fireplace flared green. Ron Weasley stepped out, looking dapper in fuchsia robes. He had an elvish coffee in one hand and a half-eaten eclair in the other. "Hi, darling." Ron winked at Hermione. "Decided to drop by for lunch, and you've got—" Fluffy the Third let out a deafening roar, splashing drool onto Ron's expensive boots. The coffee and eclair hit the floor. Ron turned the color of parchment, made a sound like a frightened mouse, and with incredible speed for his age, dove behind Harry, clutching his friend's robes. By Merlin's beard, what is that demon? Ron shrieked from behind Harry's shoulder. Harry, kill it! Burn it! Send it to Azkaban! It's looking at me like I'm a chicken nugget. I'm trying, Harry shouted. Magic won't work. Ronald, stop hiding behind Potter and help us, Hermione barked. Your wife is the Minister for Magic. Show some solidarity. Ron peeked out, trembling. I'm a businessman, Hermione, not a manticore tamer. I love you, but I'm not being eaten for your servers. Then Ron's eyes widened. He reached into his bottomless pocket and pulled out a pink brick of substance. Experimental sample, Ron yelled. Super sticky toffee for talkative trolls. Glues jars shut for 48 hours. Flavor, salmon and bacon. Someone, throw it at him. Throw it yourself. It's your invention, Hermione snapped. I am not going near that thing. Ron flatly refused, shoving the pink brick into Hagrid's massive hands. Hagrid, you do it. Toss it in. Hagrid looked at the toffee with deep suspicion. I can't give this to the baby, Ron. What if there's too much sugar? And salmon and bacon might give him indigestion. Hagrid, Harry yelled. He just ate a mile of copper wire. I think his stomach can handle the toffee. Throw it. As Minister for Magic, I order you to throw it. Hermione stomped her foot. And as your friend, Hagrid, please. The monster opened its mouth to pounce on Hermione. Right, just for you, Hermione, Hagrid yielded. He wound up and tossed the pink slab perfectly into the flobberworm-like maw. Chomp! A loud squelching sound filled the room. The monster tried to open its mouth, but the super sticky toffee had sealed its jaws shut. The bacon flavor hit its brain. The creature's eyes rolled back in bliss. It slumped to the floor, curled into a ball, and began to snore loudly. Silence fell. Hagrid sniffled. Look at him, sleeping like an angel. Ron exhaled, stepped out from behind Harry, and dusted off his robes. That'll be 15 galleons for the toffee, dear, he said, putting an arm around Hermione. And you know, if you hadn't wasted your time with SPEWW back in the day and gone into business with me, we wouldn't be fighting mutant dogs at work. Hermione slid down the wall and sat on the floor, burying her face in her hands. Harry sat down next to her. You know, he whispered, when I was 12, I fought a basilisk with a sword. It was simple. Now I'm in my early 40s, and I don't even know which form to fill out for a fiber optic cable eaten by a manticore. Epilogue. By evening, the digital portal was back online. The servers were fixed with a mix of Reparo and silver duct tape, sent by Arthur Weasley with a note. Muggles call this the Grey God. It fixes everything. Hagrid headed back to Hogwarts, towing his sleeping pet on a levitating platform. He left a bag of his rock cakes for the computer people. In the main menu of the portal, a new field appeared in bright red text. I am Rubeus Hagrid. I am a Hogwarts professor, and I don't know how to use the internet. Click here for a courier, and for the love of Merlin, do not bring your monsters to London. Harry sat in his office and laughed out loud for the first time all day. Adult life was definitely harder than defeating Voldemort, but at least he still had his friends. End of Episode 2. Subscribe so you don't miss the next chapter of The Ministry. Tell us in the comments, what magical creature would you keep in your flat if you didn't have to fill out any paperwork?